what NAP stands for, New Agreement Process. So thank you. Based on what Dana was talking about earlier, we want to make a new agreement. And the way I tend to describe NAP, which is, again, far less erudite than Dana's version. So we tend to not want to acknowledge something that we don't like, which is, he didn't text me back. That's fine. That's fine. Because once we acknowledge it, we have to accept it. Once we accept it, we tend to slide into agreement with it. Because in that example that I gave, I don't want to acknowledge the fact that he didn't message me back, because as soon as I slide into that old agreement, it means that he hates me. As opposed to, if I acknowledge something, then I can accept it. If I accept it, I can get the information around it. And once I get that, I can choose to change my agreement, which is, oh my goodness, thank you so much for taking care of that phone call that we needed to take care of. I can easily not have any feelings around this other than gratitude, and I'll just deal with this thing that I can deal with on my own anyway. So new agreement process is all about changing your agreement. The agreement is between you and you.
And fundamentally always is.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we bring in the epigenetics of it, so I know a lot of you already know this. I'm digging more into this, and it's so fascinating to me. When we experience a trauma, we are drawn to replicating the trauma over and over and over again to get as much information as we can from it so that we can be safe if that happens again in the future. So if somebody in your lineage experiences a trauma and is not completely well-resourced enough in the moment to fully process it, it remains a trauma. That epigenetic switch flips in their DNA, and their system, when they then have children, says, because I love my offspring so much and I want them to survive, I'm going to pass this trauma awareness down to them so they can try to replicate this same trauma experience as many times as they need to in order to learn enough from it that they are not troubled by it ever again. So it is between you and you, and it's between your mother and her, and your grandfather and him, and as they pass those traumas down to you genetically, or in Chinese medicine, ancestral chi, but it's the same thing.
We swim in super deep waters around here. Think of it this way. It's like, okay, so you're doing your best to be conscious and aware, make good decisions for yourself. And like all of us, we have history and lineage. What if all that stuff back there that your parents, in their trauma response and reactions, dumped perceptions on of you? I'd much rather know that that's a possibility in my conscious mind so I can actually make decisions and be informed by it than have it all back there operating with me having no clue. So this is a tool to keep ourselves in centered, grounded self-worth, high value, and ability to make choices about things that we had nothing to do with receiving, right? In the work that I do, I kind of classify it pretty simply. We either are coping with life, right? Or we're handling life, right? Coping means we're just becoming more and more burdened and weighed down by the things that are imposed upon us because we're unaware that we actually have a choice about how we respond to them, right? Handling life is a path of recognizing that no matter what comes my way, I don't have to go into automatic, oh, well, that's just the way it is. That's just what my family does. That's just how we all grew up kinds of places and remain victimized by circumstances outside of me that I didn't cause.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a broad, but
yes,
you're like right in the wheelhouse of where these concepts got developed and why they've been developed.
I might give you a different answer as well, on a sort of science-based bent, which is when there is a trauma, we flip-flop between being the one who is traumatized and the one who perpetrates the trauma. So when we, especially as mammals, experience a trauma, we are drawn to doing it over and over and over again. So let's say I am walking down the street and there's a man walking towards me who is, for whatever reason, in a mood and he yells at me and reaches out and shoves me and I get traumatized as a result. I will now be drawn to maybe men of his height or his hair color or his mood, whatever my brain needs to work out. What happens if this happens at night? What happens during the day? What happens if I'm with a man? What happens if I'm with a woman? So I know how to remain safe. But my brain every once in a while will say, what happens if I'm walking up to a guy and screw him? I'm just going to shove him first. I'm going to feel what it feels like to be the one who is powerful rather than feeling powerless. So in that trauma cycle that we play out again and again, every once in a while, either we will, or as a result of what was going on before us in our lineage, we will be drawn to doing the opposite, doing to someone else what was done to us. And so oftentimes when you're looking at something like my parents didn't even technically seem to care as or said they didn't care if we survived, that can be the trauma response of I've been so traumatized 2, 3, 15, 100 generations back by losing children that I'm going to try not caring and see if that makes it any easier, or whatever the reasoning is behind it. And quite often it's not reasoning, it's just handed down epigenetics, and it can still be part of that same trauma cycle.
And the grace and compassion are the things that stop those cycles, right?
Yeah.
That's what this process is there to help you fortify and build resilience in, so that no matter what's come before you, you have a choice about it.